Hello everyone, Republic Jim here. Today I wanted to talk a little about the workouts that I'm doing right now. Obviously I still occasionally am doing high rep squats and heavy deadlifts and such. But for my regular training sessions, I'm trying to be more consistent, get in more days per week. So I started doing a variation of easy strength based off of what Coach Dan John came up with. It's basically the same set of lifts and weights and everything for the same number of reps every day. Theoretically 4 days a week for 10 weeks, but I'm averaging more like 3 days a week, sometimes 4. But then, like I said, with a session here and there with the squats or deadlifts. But life has definitely been challenging lately, both as far as time and energy. And it's just really hard to be disciplined when I know I have an intense workout session scheduled. There's just real incentive there to come up with rationalizations for why I can't fit it in. So I wanted something that I could be a little more disciplined in, and it's not as intense. That's the whole point of easy strength. It's just supposed to be getting that consistency and the volume in, doing those same movements 3 or 4 days a week. It pays off over time. And as you can see, my first movement in that is the overhead press. And then from there, I do regular back squat, and I tried to set this up to where I have most of the stuff ready ahead of time, so there's minimal time wasted in changing things over. Idea is just to keep the weights light enough to where it's not overly straining, and just do 2 sets of 5 reps on everything pretty much, with some variations. And then over time, as the weights start feeling too light, then adding some, but never getting to where it feels like too much of a strain. And as always, my disclaimer on the squats and overhead press for that matter is you should always do it facing into the rack instead of facing away like what I do. It's much safer to do it facing into the rack, walk the weight backwards, do the set, and then re-rack it going forward. But I do things different, and I'm aware of the risk. But yeah, don't imitate what I do. do it safely. Anyway, like I was saying, yeah, 2 sets of overhead press, 2 sets of squats. I've already added some weight just in the couple weeks that I've been doing it, but still trying to keep it to where it's not too intense. And then after I do the squats, then I have everything relatively set up to where the rest of the movements I do in sort of a giant set, just, you know, do multiple things one after another, and then take a little breather and then do it again for the second set. And so it makes it really efficient time-wise, and because the weights are lower, don't have to spend as much time resting in between sets. So definitely speeds things up. I spent about 10 minutes just doing general warm-up before I started, but that's just to get the muscles warmed up and blood circulating, especially when it's a cooler morning. And this is the part where there's a little bit of time wasted in switching things over. I could have set it up slightly different to where I was using the same equipment for everything, but I wanted to use the axle bar for this. The idea on this is to get a variety of different movements to target all the muscles in one workout, just to make it efficient. But as it is, I have 2 hinge movements, but that's because I'm doing the Romanian deadlift with the axle bar, keeping it lighter, and gives me a chance to work on my grip as well as my hamstrings. And then later in the set, I also have the kettlebell swing, which I use my loading pin there with the T-handle, but that's more of an explosive hinge movement, whereas the RDL is more slow and controlled. So 2 different movements there, but yeah, like I said, I just will rotate straight through between the different movements. And took my glasses off because there's the swing and rollout both make it difficult for my glasses to stay on, so I just do it this way. circle around here just because it's easier to get into position on this, and I don't know how well this will show up on camera, but just laying down and doing these reverse flies. Do them for a little higher reps with low weights. And then straight on into lateral raises. And then rounding out the set, come over here and do some swings. So you can see that going through one movement after another like that with minimal rest is pretty efficient on time. Now I get just a little bit of a breather before I start in on the second giant set. And then to finish out each workout, I do some variant of a loaded carry. I mix it up every time just to keep that part interesting, because obviously it can get a little boring doing the same thing multiple times a week. So, you know, the variations on the loaded carry help. Today I'm going to be doing a suitcase carry. Just take it down the length of the barn, set it down, and come back with the other hand. But first I need to get in my second set on this. find that doing these dumbbell movements multiple times a week really tires out my shoulder muscles. They're kind of tired and sore most of the time, but because the weight is light, recovery isn't too bad. Just get a good pump. Oh. And I'm at least starting to see a little improvement on definition on my delts, so I think it's paying off. I just have to get some stuff moved out of the way on my suitcase carrier. And I'll be doing 2 sets of this as well. Won't be able to see once I go past, but it's from here down to the other end is just under 40 feet. One more of those and I'll have my conditioning work in on this session. Between that and the swings, get some functional cardio there. And this is just a nice warm up before the rest of my day's activities. I have to spend a bunch more time cutting and hauling firewood and doing some more home repairs, which is why I decided to go with easy strength and make it a little simpler to get these sessions in. So it ends up being around a half hour for the actual session, and then, like I said, about 10 minutes for warm-up. I can reduce that if I don't spend as much time standing around and speed up the pace. I have gotten a couple of workout sessions in the entire session just over a half hour. That's definitely harder though. Leaves me pretty winded, but good way to squeeze it in when time's really limited. Wraps up this session. So that was my variant of easy strength. I highly recommend following Dan John. He has a fair amount of videos on YouTube, and if you search, he has quite a few articles that he wrote on T-Nation years ago. Unlike some of these teenage influencers that are taking steroids and doing all sorts of stuff just for physique, Dan John spent years competing in multiple strength sports, and he's coached tons of athletes, and I think now he's somewhere in his 60s, still very knowledgeable and useful source of information for, especially for aging lifters and athletes and so on. But yeah, he's a wealth of information, so definitely recommend looking him up. And yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying doing this block of training, and hopefully by the time I finish this, then my schedule will have changed somewhat and I can get back into some of my other more intense stuff. And I'll still be doing another high rep squat session sometime soon, but for the day-to-day, this is what I'm doing at the moment. So hope that was interesting. This has been Republic Jim. I'll talk to you later.